So we're going to be talking about what is a retinol, how does it work. Again, this is a foundational ingredient. We're going to talk about some of the most commonly asked questions, take a little bit at behind the scenes and all of the work that went into creating these incredible products using this incredible ingredient. Then not only the main players in the ingredients, but the supporting ingredients as well, and why they're so deliberately chosen and how they fit in, as well as some like derm-specific recommendations. Of course, the first question is, what is retinol? Why is this everywhere? Why is this such a staple when it comes to skincare? And here, this slide, we're talking about those fine lines, even the texture that you noticed may not have been the day before. Maybe you didn't notice it. Maybe now they're turning into these deeper wrinkles. And a big part of this whole discussion, especially with both of these cornerstone ingredients and products, is being proactive. Treating this early, you're going to get so much more out of your routine and your skincare routine if you're proactive instead of reactive with your skincare. So how does a retinol work? Well, in a way, you find that it almost does everything, which is why it seems like anytime someone brings up skincare, these enter the discussion. But one of the most important things that they do is it stimulates collagen production. So this is one of the building blocks. In fact, it is a building block that's found in our entire body, and it's a cornerstone in our skin for giving it our structure. And by increasing the collagen, it's going to help improve the elasticity, which is that like healthy, youthful bound in our skin. And then wrinkles. It smooths these out, especially if you get to it early with those fine lines. Another thing retinols do, which is just why they wear so many hats, is they increase the skin cell turnover. And this is especially important for us as we get a little older because that process slows down. But by doing this, it improves our skin texture, it improves the overall tone, and it does that in multiple different ways. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of this as well. But then with all of that combined, it just helps the skin look radiant. And that's actually a very realistic word. I think when you see someone with a really nice skincare routine, their skin really just has that glow to it, a healthy glow, and the radiance really comes through and helps you look fresh, more rested than maybe you even are. And that's always a really nice thing. And then moving on past that, we talk about retinol and retinoids in the space of acne. And they're really foundational there because they work on all of the steps in some way. And some of those cornerstone steps are how they unclog the pores. They can minimize the appearance of the pores, which is a really tricky thing to get done in the real world. And then they can fade acne scars and even hyperpigmentation, which again contributes to that overall evening out of the tone. And then a commonly asked question is, well, how does this work with the skin thickness? It actually helps thicken the skin and in a very healthy way. And so this thickening of the epidermis, or that top layer of the skin, it really makes it look, like it says, strong, healthy, resilient. But all of this together kind of gives you that radiant and healthy looking appearance. Now, there are some pretty commonly asked questions with this, and we're going to go over some of the specific answers to help guide the conversation, help guide everyone in how we use this and incorporate this ingredient into your routine, because it's really a must-have ingredient. If it can be used for someone, it really should be used. So the first question is, can you use retinols in the morning? And the answer there is no, not really, because they are broken down by UV light, but they're also actually temperature dependent too. With both of those factors in mind, this retinol becomes a staple nighttime ingredient. Now, there's a lot of conversations about washing your face in general, especially when it comes to morning and night washes. But with the specifics of retinol and do you need to wash this off in the morning? Technically, no. Overall, you do need to wear SPF because there's some thought about sun sensitivity with retinoids and retinols, but especially in the context of other ingredients as well. But wearing SPF, which we'll talk about, is foundational. And if you honestly don't wear your SPF and you're using a retinol, you're really missing that partner and very strong additive synergistic pair for a skincare routine. And then can anyone use retinols? Technically, yes, but because of what we know about retinols and retinoids and how they interact with individuals who are pregnant or breastfeeding, when you take them orally and systemically, it's best just to avoid topical retinols as well during those same periods of time. And then the other question that comes up a lot, and this is kind of practical in terms of how are we going to build this out, how are we going to incorporate this into our own skincare routines, and when we talk to others about this, is what can you not mix? In fact, I'm going to start with the last statement here because this is the key and the linchpin to the whole thing, and that's certain ingredients can cause irritation when paired with retinols, because retinol can be a little bit irritating, and we're going to talk about that and touch on that too. But some of these other ingredients like vitamin C, benzoyl peroxide, alpha hydroxy acids like glycolic acid, beta hydroxy acids like salicylic acid, physical scrubs and peeling gels, they should be used with caution because they can be irritating, but it's for everyone to consider in their own skincare routine. But irritation is definitely something to be mindful of. And with that in mind, the next question talks about that. If it stings and turns my skin red, is that normal? So with retinols in particular, because of what we talked about here, how it increases skin cell turnover and how that actually is an overall positive effect, when we're talking about irritation, it's actually normal. It's anticipated and expected, because when the retinoids cause a skin cell to turn over, it does cause a temporary irritation, peeling, like you would expect when the skin cells turn over more quickly, and that can lead to itching and redness. But with continued use, unlike with some other ingredients, retinols, your skin actually does adjust. Now, it doesn't mean people don't have to take a break or it's too bad. In fact, the boxes with the retinol oil actually says that as well. But with continued use, it actually gets better. So it's something that really you want to encourage yourself and encourage other people not to give up on if there is any redness and irritation, because it will end up resolving itself. And then you can get all of the benefits once you push past that, if you even experience that. And with the next tip, so move slowly when using a retinol. Again, on one of these products even says you can start every few days, and then the goal being every night. And you can also apply a small amount every other day. And again, work yourself up. Another way too, because our skin is different in each area, we all kind of have a little bit of combination skin. But if we apply a small amount, if we apply only to the specific problem areas, looking at whatever goal you're going to be using this ingredient for, you might spare some more sensitive skin on your face that maybe you didn't really want to aggressively treat at this moment, or maybe it doesn't have dark spots on it and this you're really going for. So if you spare areas that might be problematic or that may not need the ingredient as much, you can spare those. And then there's always the caveat about sensitive skin, like around the eyes and around the mouth. So be deliberate where you put it, be aware of where you put it, and be careful around those sensitive areas. And then again, just give your skin time as it adjusts to using this ingredient. So another thing here, when we talk about you used it, you want to incorporate it, you've got a plan, but now we have to talk about how to store it. So it is sensitive to light and heat. So once you buy it, it actually might be very beneficial to, one, keep it certainly out of direct light. That's no question. Definitely out of heat. But even you can go further and store it at a fridge, 3 to 10 degrees Celsius. That might help prolong the activity of this, keep it fresh longer, and make sure it's working optimally for you anytime you use it. And then additionally, like the first line says, if you buy it, use it. It does you no good if it's sitting on your shelf. And of course, the longer you have it just sitting around, the more likely it's just going to become less effective with time. So just make sure you're using it after you buy it, because it's going to be most effective there. All of these things are packaged extensively, deliberately and carefully. And so especially if you open it, make sure you use it. So retinol itself is equal to how this kind of differs from some other types of retinoids. And just a real quick umbrella statement, because you've probably heard me already flip between the term retinoid, retinol. A retinoid is the family. A retinol is a type of retinoid, just like fruit is a family, but a banana is a type of fruit. So retinol is to retinoid as it is to fruit. So that's why you will hear the terms used interchangeably, but they are distinct. Retinol, again, it is the gold standard of anti-aging care. If you have a place for it, if you can use it, again, I would say you should probably be using it. And you have to be very deliberate, because not only when we're talking about packaging and storing it, but when they're creating these products, they put a lot of thought in how to create them and make sure it's effective. So even though, like they state here, some of the derivatives might be easier to work with, they might not have the same benefits. So when picking a product, pure retinol definitely has some advantages. And there's like a basic flow in that some of the derivatives require multiple conversions to become active. And this is thought to make them less effective. Now, retinol requires 2 steps, so retinol here being in the middle, to become active into retinoic acid. And that actually is beneficial in some ways in that it can be more gentle. And there's actually some very specifics about the science within the skin as to why this is also more gentle. But retinol is a great gentle option that requires minimal conversions before it's active in the skin. And so the statement here in bold, while pure retinol may be a little more stimulating, for the amount applied, it's more effective than some of these other derivatives, and that's absolutely true. Let's see. Now, the two individual products we're going to be talking about here, one is the cream, and that's this first one here. So this is the pure retinol cream, and the verbiage here when they talk about it's a retinol for beginners, it's a great retinol for anyone, but it's an ideal option for someone who's beginning. The reason is because not only is the vehicle a cream vehicle, but it also is stored in a way that's going to help it last longer. So they talk about here that aluminum container, and I don't know if you can see me or just my screen, but I'm holding the product up regardless. But it's in a really nice aluminum container, and this is going to help it last longer. But because of the concentration here, the 0.1, that's a very gentle percentage for a retinol product. So that, in addition to the vehicle, in addition to some of these particular ingredients like panthenol, allantoin, and then they have tocotrienol, which is an extremely extra effective form of vitamin E antioxidant. All of these complement the vitamin A or the retinol to help it do its job, to help it be more soothing, to help it be less irritating, and to help it be effective. So all of this really complements it extremely well. And then with this, the benefits that you would expect to see over time are improvements in the fine lines, the elasticity, the texture, the acne, the dark spots, plus this and the other ingredients and the vehicle all helps to moisturize. So for first-time retinol users, this is an extremely great option for someone who's beginning. And again, I really do believe actually this is a good beginner and long-term option for someone who's getting the results they want. I think it's just a beautifully elegant product. The second side of this is the retinol 0.5% oil. Now this has some very unique features too. So once again, we talked about the stability of this and the work needed to go behind creating these products. It's very extensive, and so putting this together, this oil is a very nice option for the same maximum benefits, the fine lines, wrinkles, elasticity, radiance. It moisturizes in a different way, it nourishes. But here we see a 0.5%. So instead of 0.1%, we have 0.5%. So it's a bit stronger. It also has that super effective antioxidant tocotrienol. But then this is one of my favorite oils, squalane. And they talk about this in the packaging as well, but this definitely holds true. Some people, when they use oils, they're concerned about the greasiness and oiliness of it. So this can be used for someone with very dry skin. But the nice thing about squalane, it absorbs deeper into the skin, and pretty much unlike any other oil, it doesn't leave much, if any, of an oily residue. It sits beautifully on the skin. It's probably, if not, it might be my favorite skin oil. And so this is just a perfect partner for the retinol. It has a ton of benefits on its own. It works in multiple ways as a hydrator. And so this is a great step-up product. In general, this is great for people who are starting to see the signs of aging. Again, it's best for someone who is just starting to experience it, being proactive instead of reactive. If you want to have something to add to your skincare routine that's going to really help the skin look healthy, thicker, firmer, getting fine lines. And then, like I said, this step-up product has a much higher strength, which is more probably going to be more effective for most people, plus a really unique and hydrating ingredient to kind of complement but offset some of that irritation, especially for people with dry skin. So if you want to try to figure out how to split these two products, although both good and unique options, again, the one on the screen's right, the retinol 0.1% cream, very good, gentle starter cream, just really to help people walk into the space and introduce this. And then the other one too is a very highly potent 0.5% pure retinol in that squalane oil that sits beautifully, especially on dry skin. So you could even simply break this down to beginner and advanced, but I think both would fit well into anyone's skincare routine. So the goal here is, as much as we can, halt that aging process and then try to prevent those wrinkles before they come up. So we're going to pass it on to Dr. Casale here, and he's going to talk about this other cornerstone ingredient and that is going to be our SPF and our sunscreen. I'm going to figure out how to stop sharing those.
How about that? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Dr. Jarrett Casal. I'm a dermatology resident physician in North Carolina, and I'm really excited to be joining the 2022 CusRx Supporters Program as a mentor. I wish everyone good luck. Hopefully this is informative and helpful for you. So let's get right to it. This lecture, we're going to talk about the basics of sunscreen. And the star of the day here is this vitamin E vitalizing sunscreen with SPF 50+. So that's going to be the star of the day, but we're going to talk first about sunscreens in general. So this is our itinerary for this lecture. First, we're going to talk about sunscreen and the glossary. What do these terms mean? What does it mean to be an SPF? And we'll go through all those sunscreen terms. Fun facts, get to know your sunscreen. And then we're going to really hone in on this sunscreen and tell you why it's unique, the Vitamin E Vitalizing Sunscreen SPF 50. And at the end, there will be a little Q&A. All right, so the sunscreen glossary. What does this all mean? SPF, broad spectrum, 50+. So when you use the term SPF, that's a protection grade that only involves UVB rays. So a lot of people think SPF, involves all UV rays, but there's actually UV rays are divided into UVA and UVB. And UVB rays are the ones that cause sunburn, damage the skin, and contribute to skin cancer by causing changes in the DNA to the keratinocytes, which are those skin cells that constantly turn over. PA is a separate grading that is a protection grade that is related more to UVA rays. So UVA rays, they penetrate more deeply and they play a greater role in aging of the skin. So these are gonna go through the epidermis and go down into the dermis, which is the layer of skin below the epidermis, which is where your skin cells are. The dermis is made of collagen and connective tissue. And when you start degrading collagen and connective tissue in the dermis, that's when you start to see fine lines and wrinkles and all those signs of aging that we see. Broad spectrum, this is a term that means it covers both UVA and UVB rays. So very important when you're choosing a sunscreen, you want to look for a sunscreen that's broad spectrum. That's going to cover both of these. You don't want to just protect yourself from skin cancer. You want to protect yourself from photoaging as well.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Hello. Sorry, Dr. Casal, to bother you again. I think the slideshow isn't moving. To the
it's not moving?
Yeah. Okay. I think now it is. Can everyone see the skin sunscreen glossary right now that's being popped up on the screen?
Yeah, it seems to be okay.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now no, you're fine. Now I'm on the next slide. Can everyone see this next slide now?
I think there's a bit of a lag because it's still showing the sunscreen glossary from our end.
Okay.
And now it moved on just now to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I have to exit out in between. Okay. I'll just exit out in between. If I'm not on the slide that I'm referencing, just let me know and I'll come back and switch it back over, okay?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
All right, so now we're going to hone in particular about our Vitamin E Vitalizing Sunscreen. So this is a really, really awesome sunscreen packed full of awesome ingredients. And so like we said before, that SPF 50+, that's a protection grade that only involves UVB. The 50 refers to how long the sun's radiation would take to redden the skin versus the amount of time without any sunscreen. And then the broad spectrum there on the right, you can see that's an indicator that this protects against both UVA and UVB rays. Let's see, okay. So now we're going to talk about physical versus chemical sunscreen. Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties.
Can you share the entire screen?
Yes,
Like
can you?
full screen mode?
Yeah, it's showing up full screen from my end. Is it not showing up from everyone else's end full screen?
No, I don't think so, because I'm seeing comments that the PowerPoint is not on full screen mode.
Sharing it and then start sharing it again and see what
Oh,
happens.
yeah.
How is that? Is that any better, or is that the same?
It's the same.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can just, go ahead. There's no issue like with the presentation itself. It's just not showing on full screen mode. So I think we can just move on.
Okay, is it showing? It's strange.
It's showing everything. Yeah, we can see everything. It's just not on screen.
Okay, let me see. No, I don't think that's gonna help. Okay, so is this okay, or this isn't showing on the full screen right here?
No. But we can see everything. We can see everything. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. If anyone has any ideas on how to fix that, please let me know. I'm in PowerPoint, and so if I hit presenter view, it's going to show this with the next slide up there. But that doesn't really help because that's not full screen. So let's see. Yeah, if anyone has any ideas, feel free to chime in the chat. But if not, I'll just keep rolling.
Yes. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. All right, so now let's talk about chemical versus physical sunscreens. So these have different mechanisms of action and how they protect you against UV radiation. So we'll talk about chemical first and we'll talk about physical. So chemical sunscreens absorb rather than repel the UV light. How they work is basically they absorb UV radiation and convert it to a lower frequency for radiation like infrared or heat, and it dissipates through the skin as heat rather than staying and damaging cells as UV radiation. Typically, on average, these sunscreens are easier to rub into the skin and they're less likely to leave a white cast as opposed to physical sunscreens, which we're going to get to here in a second. As a rule of thumb, for people with sensitive skin, chemical sunscreens can be kind of irritating, and this is just a virtue of the ingredients that go into the UV blocking. Sometimes it can be a little irritating, especially if you have a compromised skin barrier. So we're going to talk about this here in a second and how it relates to the sunscreen we're talking about today. Physical sunscreens work a little bit differently. These reflect UV light instead of absorbing it, and they're recommended for those who have extremely sensitive skin because they tend to have less of an irritancy potential than the chemical sunscreens. Oftentimes, the finish isn't too favorable with these. They tend to leave more of a thick white cast, and so oftentimes people don't like using them because of that reason. There's no right or wrong. It's really up to you and what suits your skin. But we're going to talk about why the sunscreen that we're highlighting today, this vitamin E vitalizing sunscreen, is a great option. All right, fun facts. Let's get to know your sunscreen. Hopefully it's moving forward. I'm just going to exit out and go back in just to make sure. So how much sunscreen do we actually need? I'm sure you guys have seen this on TikTok or social media, but basically when you're talking about sunscreen, the 2-finger method is often what's touted. And what this basically means is you apply sunscreen to your pointer finger and your middle finger along the full length of your finger. And this is going to give you enough sunscreen to apply to your face. So that's kind of the goal, the standard of how much sunscreen you should really be using to cover your entire face. Oftentimes what we see in dermatology is that people don't use enough sunscreen. So they'll put a really thin layer and then they'll get sunburn and they'll wonder why they got sunburn. And that's why. And then on top of that, reapplying every 2 hours is really important. So UV radiation breaks down some sunscreen ingredients. So that's why it's really important that you reapply. So it can only be as effective as you reapplying on a regular basis. A pro derm tip: after you take off your makeup, you can reapply sunscreen using a dry sponge or a damp beauty blender as the last step in your skincare routine. When should you apply? You should do this as the final step in your skincare routine. So after all of your actives, after you've cleansed your face, After everything is on, that's when you apply your sunscreen. And you want to do it about 15 minutes before sun exposure to give the sunscreen time to penetrate into your skin and provide you with protection. Even when you're staying indoors, it's really important that you still apply sunscreen. UV rays, especially UVA, can pass through glass windows. So we know that even when people are driving in their car, we've seen this before with truck drivers and people who have a lot of exposure, especially on the left side of their face here in the United States. Their left side of their face has much more photo aging and damage than the right side of their face for this exact reason, because UV rays can pass through glass windows. So always double cleanse. So using an oil or balm-based cleanser, and this is going to break down oil-soluble compounds and contaminants and things that are going to accumulate on your face throughout the day. And then following that up with a water-based cleanser is really important. Water-based cleanser is going to do the opposite. So this is going to work for more polarized compounds and break down any sort of contaminants that are polarized on the face. And this is going to really give you the best cleanse available for your face so that everything else that you apply after that works better, including your sunscreen. UV rays are the most intense between 10 and 2. So if you choose to go outside during that time, although we don't recommend it, make sure that you're fully equipped and you're reapplying both heavily and consistently every 2 hours. Alrighty, now let's talk about our vitamin E vitalizing sunscreen SPF 50. Sorry for the PowerPoint troubles again. All right, so this is a dermatologist-tested, clinically proven sunscreen that's safe for sensitive skin. It's a reef-friendly sunscreen, so we know that certain sunscreen ingredients contain, or certain sunscreen ingredients can be harmful to coral reefs. This includes oxybenzone and octinoxate, and this sunscreen doesn't contain either of those. So it is reef-friendly, so environmentally friendly sunscreen, and it's a chemical sunscreen that, unlike a lot of chemical sunscreens, can be used for people that have sensitive skin, which is really, really nice. All right, this sunscreen is FDA approved. It's over the counter. It's an SPF 50 plus, so it's a very, very strong sunscreen. It's going to block it's going to block UV rays to a great degree. And so as you, exit out of the screen by accident. Let's see. Okay, so as you can see, top left, broad spectrum protection is confirmed. So it blocks both UVA and UVB rays by this testing. And then it's dermatologist tested, safe for sensitive skin, FDA approved. So, sunscreens in the United States need to be FDA approved. So this got FDA approval. And then the testing there in the bottom right confirmed that this is an SPF 50 plus. So the SPF label is about 52, but so it blocked even more than SPF 50, about 56, plus or minus 7.2, average about 52. So very, very awesome, powerful sunscreen. It's been tested and it works great. All right, next we're going to be talking about key ingredients. All right, so key ingredients in the sunscreen, silica, so we'll start on the top right there. This controls sebum production, so some people have really oily skin, that's myself included. Silica helps to absorb that sebum and can be really helpful for people who have oily skin and kind of even out that skin texture and help with their pores. It's going to naturally improve the skin texture over time. And like I said, for people who have oily skin, this is a miracle ingredient. This works so well. I always look for this in products that I use personally just because my skin happens to be very oily. Gossypium herbaceum is a cotton extract. This acts as an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. It absorbs and controls excess oil along with that silica. So those are going to work together to help control the oil production on your face. I'm going to end on tocopherol, so we'll come back to that in a sec. Theobroma cocoa, cacao extract. This also controls sebum, great for pore care, and naturally improves the skin texture. So whenever you're looking at sunscreen ingredients, you want to look for ingredients like this that are not going to clog your pores. They're going to be helpful for you. They're going to control sebum. They're not going to make any underlying skin conditions worse. And last, but certainly not least, our powerhouse ingredient, tocopherol. This is a form of vitamin E. And vitamin E is a very, very potent fat-soluble antioxidant that reduces free radicals in the skin. This is one of the best ingredients that we have in skincare products. So the fact that it's incorporated in the sunscreen, I'm personally very excited about. This helps to reduce the visible signs of aging and skin damage, and it works synergistically. So we know that UV light causes oxidative damage in the skin. So anytime you have an antioxidant that's working there, it's going to be helpful to mitigate any damage that is occurring from UV light. If let's say you're outside of that window of reapplication. So this sunscreen, it's lightweight, fast absorbing, non-greasy, no white cast, and reef friendly. So it checks pretty much every box that you would look for in a sunscreen. This is a super powerhouse sunscreen, and I'm really excited about it.
So I've dedicated a lot of time and whole videos to this one topic, but when we talked briefly about the anti-acne benefits there, retinoids in America are FDA approved down to the age of 9. And we use them off-label even younger than that. So if you're talking about acne, it makes perfect sense to use a retinol, even late childhood. And for anti-aging or photoaging, preventing that, it really depends on you. So we talked about, like, do you wake up in the morning, do you see those fine lines, or do you start to see those wrinkles? And as soon as you see that, it's reasonable to start it, because the goal is to be preventative, to help treat your skin before it has too much sun damage. And so you're not trying to undo a lot, you're just trying to prevent a lot. So not a specific number there, but that's because it's a highly personalized, individualized choice.
So retinoids can be a little irritating around the eyes for some people because the eyelid skin is so thin. Some of the thinnest skin on the body, you really have to kind of be careful using it around your eyes. So in order to kind of be careful when you're applying it, I would say if you have sensitive skin, maybe avoid your eyes. Or one thing you could also do is apply like a barrier between your eyelid skin and the skin around it. So you could use a really thin layer of petrolatum, and this is going to help prevent some of the retinol from penetrating into that skin that's very thin. So that could be helpful too for some people.
That is one of the best. And for the cream, what type of skin would that be good for too? And when applying the retinol product, should we be applying it to dry skin? 2.5 questions buried in there. So would the retinol oil be good for dry skin? Absolutely. Squalane is an incredible ingredient. I'm a little bit off label here, so I'll take full responsibility for this part of the comments, but squalane is incredible. It's humectant, hydrating. It's just incredible oil, and the depth that it reaches for the hydration as well. So it would be a great option for dry skin. I've got both on my skin right now. A big decision between picking between two products is going to be based off of the strength. So I think that was a main point of the slides and how we let that guide us. For the cream, I think that would be perfect really for normal to combination skin as well. The retinol itself will help with oil control, which is a really nice, a nice thing for people with normal to oily skin. So if you're going to use the cream, it would be fine, I think, for dry skin, but maybe optimal for that combination to oily skin. And then should you be applying it to dry skin? The answer there is yes, because in theory, if you apply it to wet skin, it's going to absorb more and it can be more irritating. That's not a problem for everybody. So if a person doesn't have irritation, that step becomes less important. But if a person does have any irritation, applying it to dry skin is actually definitely the preferred way to do it.
So what order should you apply the retinol oil in your skincare routine, last and after moisturizer? So this is a really good question, and I kind of want to echo what Dr. Maxfield said. This is can be personalized to your skin type. So after you cleanse your skin, that's when your skin is most ready to accept your active ingredients like your retinols. And so for people who have very sensitive skin, sometimes you might even want to put your moisturizer on first, and then you put your retinol on after that. So I'll give credit where credit is due. Dr. Maxfield and one of our other colleagues, they talk about the retinol sandwich. So the retinol sandwich is basically applying moisturizer, applying retinol, and applying moisturizer again. And this is a really good way to help prevent excess irritation when you're using retinol. So if your skin can tolerate it, I would say do the retinol and then do the moisturizer after. If you tend to have a little bit more sensitive skin or more on the sensitive side, then you could either do the retinol sandwich where you do a moisturizer, retinol, moisturizer, or apply a little bit of moisturizer and then the retinol over it. So the order is going to depend on your skin type, I think is kind of the answer there.
I love this question because I do love snail mucin. It's an ingredient that took me a while to warm up to, but now I love it. I'm on the coast here. It's hot, humid, and it's like a perfect lightweight moisturizer. It's reminiscent of aloe, but it's one of my favorite lightweight moisturizers. So the question is, do you use it before retinol or after? And I would say after, because in general, you're going to go with your cleansing, your active ingredients, and then your moisturizers, then SPF. And even though snail mucin is a lightweight moisturizer and it has its own unique benefits to the skin, the more important thing is getting the retinol on the skin, because that's the heavy lifter in your skincare regimen. So you want that absorption to be optimal and it to be working at 100%. And then the snail mucin would go after and then before your SPF, in my opinion.
Why do chemical sunscreens burn my eyes sometimes? So if you're outside and you're sweating and you apply a chemical sunscreen to your forehead or around your eyebrows, it can, run into your eyes. Also, if you're in the water and you're swimming and you get out of the water, some of that sunscreen can kind of be dissolved by the water and run into your eyes. So that's just something you run into all the time. In order to prevent that, you can even do the same hack we talked about before where you apply a thin layer of petrolatum. It's not a cure-all, but either way, it's better to have sunscreen on your face no matter what, even if it burns your eyes a little bit. And just try to maybe stay a little bit further away from your eyes if you can.
Is it normal to get ridiculously dry skin, cracking when trying to incorporate retinols? About 1.5 months skin barrier. It took 1.5 months to get the skin barrier back to normal. Tried to ease in again, but getting the same reaction. And I've said it, I probably said it too many times, but if a person can use a retinol, they should definitely try to use a retinol. It's so amazing and foundational. But there is always the caveat. Some people just can't tolerate them. Now, like Dr. Casal said, you can do the moisturizer sandwich. You can use a low strength. This is a very, very ideal low strength retinol with perfect complementing ingredients. And so trying to find a product with a lower strength retinol with complementing soothing ingredients in a hydrating vehicle can be another way to do it. And then just like we talked about before, introducing it every few nights up to every night. And there are studies showing that even every few nights can have benefits. Even if not optimal, it can still be beneficial. And maybe that's all a person can tolerate.
This one, can these retinol products be used on the neck as well, or is it too strong? Yeah, I think that's a really good question. In my opinion, I think they could be used on the neck. The neck skin is also something you worry about in aging. It gets a lot of sun exposure as time goes on. So you'll notice in people who have chronic sun exposure over time, a lot of people that we see, I also live by the coast. Dr. Maxwell and I live close to each other. That's a very, very common area you see aging is the neck. And also the skin here can be a little bit loose. So I think applying retinol to the neck is definitely appropriate and recommended, if you're trying to really prevent aging in every way possible.
Yeah, agreed.
All right.